Here we are. Another podcast about to kick off. I wanted to talk about change management for today's topic. And it's come to mind, I've had a conversation with Steve, who's sitting in my office now, who you'll hear from in a moment. But in addition, I was recently on a panel at Salesforce implementation, which you didn't get to go to, even though you were invited.
Dreamforce, right?
No, it was a week ago, I think. Was it last week? I think it was last week. And I was on a panel talking about Salesforce implementations. We had about 5 people up there. And then it was interesting how the conversation just morphed into change management. Like everyone was like, this is the biggest thing that people need to think about with their Salesforce implementations, and probably any technology implementation for that matter. So I think everyone recognizes the importance of change management. I think executing it is the tough part, right? And so that's kind of why I thought it would be good to kind of piggyback on not only that conversation, but the one that you and I had, Steve, recently. So about Steve, Steve and I think it's been like a year that we've known each other. I feel like it was right before our holiday
at least
timeframe.
A year.
Yeah. We had a marketing event here in Honolulu, met you through some mutual contacts, which was awesome. And we've gotten to know each other, I think, over time, and definitely have a lot of respect for your background, your experience in implementations, your experience in technology. I definitely view you as a technology leader. And I think even more so, when I observe you in action, I see a change agent, like both from a technology perspective as well as just from being a leader among the people that you work with. So very fitting to have you here. So Steve, tell us about your background, just to frame some context for this discussion.
Thank you for that. I've been doing IT for 20 plus years now. I've been in various leadership positions probably for the last 10 years of it. And I've been through lots of projects, lots of implementation projects, lots of conversion projects, lots of what I call ready, fire, aim projects. And I have yet to see change management done well by IT people. Yep. So I've been thinking about that and about why that is. And I think that most of the reason that change management for IT people is hard is most IT people I've come in contact with kind of live on the bleeding edge or the cutting edge. They're early adopters. They're always wanting to try new products. True. And so change management for them as a discipline is unnecessary. You tell a bunch of IT people, we want to go do this, and they're like, woohoo, let's go. And they're off and running, right? And often, unfortunately, in a ready, fire, aim manner. Most other people in business don't work that way. So that's part of it. They are perfectly happy with what they have. Yep. They don't see the reason that you need to change, or even if they see the reason that you need to change, they rarely understand what that means. Yep. So this is the core of the problem. You have a group of people who are going to implement something that are all about it, and another group of people who are hanging on to the wall of the pool with all their might not to be pulled into the deep end, right? So that's the problem in general with IT and change management. And I think IT people need to learn to engage professional change managers better than we do when we're doing this stuff. Because we all look at it and go, what could the problem be? This is not all that difficult. Now, the flip side of that is everybody else in the world has phones now that have convinced them that all technology is easy and can be downloaded with the push of a button, and I just turn it on and it works. And that's not true either. So it's this weird mix of we've done a really good job of dumbing technology down to the point where you need very little training, but then we've hidden the fact that it's really complex on the back end. And Salesforce is a perfect example of that. Absolutely. It's an incredibly versatile, flexible platform that's probably more complex to implement than anybody realizes until they get into it. There's lots of switches to flip. There's lots of things you can connect to. There's lots of things you can download to make it. So that's
absolutely.
And so that's, we fight the complexities that still exist in IT with the perception that there are no complexities anymore. I mean, for the most part, computers really work. So, except for Windows 10, which I don't know that I'm all that happy about Windows 10 right now. But then we don't live in a Mac world like you do, right? But I mean, Microsoft, I think, stumbled a little bit with Windows 10 and managing change around it, if you really want to be honest, because they went from this fairly rigid, easy to control update process to this, we're just going to roll stuff out whenever we feel like it, and we're probably not even going to tell you, and all of a sudden things will stop working.
Yeah, it's frustrating,
right?
Super frustrating.
Now I'm interested with the advent of Catalina to see how many people throw their Macs off the rooftop because their 32-bit apps don't work anymore. Because I know they kept saying they were going to do that, but I wonder if people were really paying attention. So we'll see.
Well, I just installed it yesterday, so we'll see how frustrated I become. But so far, so good. I like it.
You know what the game changer is? Sidecar. If you have an iPad and you want a second screen, it works. It's seamless. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. No,
so then you'll give up a little bit, and that's exactly what change management is, right? You give up a little bit to gain some advantages on the other end of it. So.
But to go back to change management, if you want it to go well, you have to have a change manager who is dedicated to that function and has experience with that function. And it's probably not a technology person. It's probably a people person.
Yep.
And let's be honest. For the most part, IT people are not people. Most of us prefer our computers to other
humans.
Human beings. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, I definitely think that's true.
Right.
I mean, I think back to, so I used to do a lot of old, back in the old days, I'll just say that, CRM implementations, global companies, and I was always part of the delivery team, whether it be engineering or business analyst or whatever. And there'd be this team of people, like usually 2 or 3 people that had a separate engagement, part of our team, but like kind of separated in a sense, that were focused on change management. And I was kind of, sort of like you snicker at them. You're like, oh yeah, they're putting together little communication slides, and you're like, oh, is that really that important?
And they're updating the thermometer with the latest percentage of done, right?
And there's that perception that's a little bit silly, right? Like I remember they'd come in and be like, yeah, we need to do this stakeholder assessment. We're going to interview everybody. And it's kind of like everyone's just kind of, oh gosh, here they come, but at the end of the day, no matter how much communication there is, how effective your training is, like it's really tough to see it well executed. I mean, even with that, like they struggled, but they were coming up with the creative ideas and trying to do videos and all this other stuff to try to get buy-in and support. What do you think is like a good practical way, or what were you going to say? I'll let you talk.
I don't know that there's a good practical way. I was thinking about my past life, and one of the things I did a while ago was medical practice, EMR, practice management software implementations. And this was right after Obamacare became a thing, and right after they mandated that doctors start to go electronic, and they really struggled with going from paper or from dictation to electronic, because when they dictate, they just spoke into a microphone and somebody else took care of it. When they write on paper, they could write in such a way that their notes were indecipherable by other people, put them at less risk, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When we started to put electronic systems in, the first thing that happens is it slows them down, because they're not thinking about doctoring. They're thinking about entering data into a system they're not familiar with. And so the first couple go-lives we did, they would scream, they would yell, they would tell you how much they hated it. It was the worst experience. What I finally realized, and what I've carried over, is you have to tell people honestly how bad it's going to be. Sugarcoating it is dumb, because they're going to figure it out on about day one. So now we tell people, you're going to hate it. It's going to be slow, because you're not going to be thinking about your job. You're going to be thinking about the system. But the light at the end of the tunnel is, we tell them, after a couple of months, muscle memory kicks in. And now you're not thinking about the system anymore. You're thinking about your work again with a tool that's probably better for you to do your job. So I think that you have to do change management, but I'm not 100% sure how good the ROI is on it. So it's a balance between, because you could have a team of change managers, right? They could talk to everybody every week and do podcasts and videocasts and all that, and tell everybody what's going on, and people are still going to hate it on day one. Because the other piece of it is, you're dragging people into a system they don't want to be in. So they're not going to do their diligence around training, which by the way is another part of good change management. they're not going to do their diligence around communicating with each other and thinking about process. It's just kind of, in most companies, the nature of it. Now, I've worked for 2 large technology companies, Intel and then a company called Mentor Graphics, which is a software company. It's a little different in a technology-centric company because people there deal with technology day in and day out, and they like technology, so they're less averse to change. But even there, you see some concern. When you go to a regular old business, like where I'm at now, where we both came from, they hold technology at arm's length and only implement what they absolutely have to, either because they're told to or because they see a need for some change. So you're really fighting City Hall on this stuff, and it's,
that's interesting. I mean, it is cultural. It's cultural maybe to the industry, like you said, or even cultural to a company that just makes it part of the norm, that we're always kind of evolving and changing. So I think that's absolutely true. And I think your point about the ROI is really a super fair point, because I'll say when I talk to a customer very early in this, we're talking about maybe a Salesforce implementation, all the importance of change management, and it always comes up, but it's certainly viewed as a luxury, because you start looking at, gosh, if I have, like you said, 1 person, 2 people assigned to that task, how much is it going to cost me? What do I get for that? And it's viewed as a little bit of a luxury, and that balance of trying to figure out how much can we include in the implementation, how much can be shared by the client team, what can be done to help offset that and make sure that it actually is there. I like your idea about sort of setting the expectation at a certain point so that they're, you know what I mean? Like, so where they're sort of not expecting the magic.
I think
you know what I mean?
It is an unfortunate truth that if you set the bar low, you're less likely to disappoint a group of people that don't want to be here and don't want to do this anyway. And it's not, I'm sure there are better ways to handle it. I'm sure if you got somebody who had a master's in psychology or sociology or something, but when you ask a bunch of IT people, really the fallback strategy is, oh yeah, it's going to be terrible. And you're going to hate it. And then you'll be okay, because you'll just forget about the tool and start doing your job again. I mean, it's we're moving out of an ERP that's 23 years old. Nobody's done a project like this in 23 years, and we're finding all of the landmines in the middle of this because of that. And it's not anybody's fault. It just is what it is. And so the go live is going to be challenging.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
We'll
have a party around it.
I got feedback from the management team, some of the managers, that they wanted to be here more and be more involved in, but then you send them emails and you ask for information, feedback, and it's crickets. And so that's the other side, is people say they want to be part of it, but they really don't. They just want to do their job. And I get it. That's just the nature of the beast. But man, it is.
Well, it's funny you say that. So I have this is weird, but my first job, I think it was my first, I'm going to attribute it to my first job, but it may not have been. There was a quote that I heard, that there are no silver bullets in technology. And it's always a thing that I say, because you can have Salesforce and you can have some really great technology solutions out there, but it's not magic in and of itself, right? And any implementation, it's all about the implementation. And I use that analogy, or that quote, a lot of times about requirements and getting the processes down, but it is equally true for the investment that you make in people and preparing them for change, telling them what's in it for me, why are we doing this, and being very repetitive about it. And even if the solution is giving them every single requirement that meets all their business needs, that it's not a silver bullet if people don't kind of buy in and take that time, like you said, to talk, either whether it be a requirement or really to help institute change within an organization.
Well, I think the thing, like I said, the thing about a platform like Salesforce, so I did an implementation one time of a different product, and it was a product to do asset management. So it was doing discovery on a network at a fairly large company. When we turned it on, I think we picked up 120,000 IP addresses. So this was a big thing. But what we did was turned it on and just let it discover everything. And then we said, oh, we have all this data. And then we went, oh, we have no idea what to do with any of this data, right? Because we weren't doing... So part of change management, too, is asking what question are you trying to solve, what problem are you trying to solve. So when we went back and dumped that database and said, what problems do we need to solve? And the first thing was we needed to do an audit of Adobe software, and then we needed to do an audit of a specific kind of server. And we started adding things back in one at a time. And I think for a product like Salesforce, that's probably an important strategy, is to not do big bang.
Yep.
And change management is a huge part of that, because you'll overwhelm people if you throw it out there and say, okay, as of today, this is the only system you're ever going to touch.
Yep.
And it may be true in the long run, but in the short run, people are going to...
It's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey.
Right? It's a never... I mean, this is the beautiful thing about Agile, is it allows you to have that journey and to get a product out and then to continue to add to it. But yeah, no, I to go back to change management in general, it's not easy. I don't think there's anybody who's very good at it. I think people who tell you they're good at it probably can't point to a ton of super successful projects, but I've heard of some interesting techniques.
Okay. Let's hear it.
So in fact, our mutual friend Aaron told me when they went live at his last company they went on a whole new ERP, and I want to say it was NetSuite, but it doesn't matter. But the point is they turned it into a contest, and they grouped people into work teams, and you won things based on your team completing its work before the other teams did. And I thought, wow, that's actually kind of brilliant. I mean, they were giving away some pretty money stuff. They were like trips to Vegas and things like that. Yeah, right. So this wasn't like, here's a set of company spoons with the logo on it. It was more like, here's a legitimate investment in you as an employee, because we understand that you're working hard to do this. But they also did regular daily meetings. They did, they had the thermometers all over the company. And so I think that it's a mix. Somewhere in there you find something that helps. But at the end of the day, day one is always bad.
It's tough.
I can't remember who it was, but some general, I think it might have been Eisenhower, said no plan survives initial contact with the enemy. And that's really kind of how this is. You turn it on and think it's going to work, and then, oh, well, we forgot about that, or that was working yesterday when we were testing, but now it's not working. That's, and I think a good portion of change management is setting that expectation with people. I mean, you can call it lowering the bar and kind of laugh about it a little bit, but it's not. It's just saying, guys, this is not going to be easy.
Yeah.
And I actually, over the last 2 weeks, met with our senior management team and then our frontline management team, and told them exactly that. This is going to be hard. Your people are going to be anxious. They're going to be fearful. Because the other thing that people forget about is a lot of people look at this and go, what does this mean for my job?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. There's an inherent fear. Yep.
And I'll say it one more time and then I'll leave it alone, but IT people are not good at feelings and people and all that kind of stuff as a rule. Not our strength.
Yeah.
Right? Ones and zeros.
Yeah, you're pretty good at it. You got some good EQ. You can pick up on it.
And I go home tired every day because of it. It's a learned skill.
Yeah.
I think for most of it, so like we don't naturally come to, and I'm generalizing, we don't naturally come to that kind of emotional awareness. It's many, many years of doing it wrong and stepping on people's feet and offending people and not realizing you're offending people. And,
yeah, exactly.
So
what, do you have an example of where you've just seen a poor implementation and been like, man, with 2020, we could have done X, Y, and Z?
There've been so many, Deena. I don't know if I have a really poor example, but I have an example of a failed implementation that could have used a great deal more change management. So I won't name the company, and it wasn't Salesforce.
Okay,
it was implementation of a product. It was an HRIS implementation, and it was a move from one product to another product. And there's two sides to change management, I think. There is the telling the regular company employees what's coming and keeping them informed about that, and telling the people on the project who aren't technical people what the expectation is and what the reality is of the project. So we tried to roll this over in 6 months. and it was a complete and dismal failure, and ended up costing about $5 or $6 million in lost revenue, not lost revenue, but in lost expense that we couldn't get back because we had purchased licenses for 5 years or whatever. It was partly because we weren't honest with ourselves in the space of change to say this isn't enough time. Now, there were some other reasons, but that to me is a place where a change manager, a good change manager, would have put their hand up and said, our expectation and reality are nowhere near each other, and we need to get them closer together. And I think it's almost always better if your change manager comes from the outside. That's the other thing, third party, because then they're not. There's
less emotion.
There's no vested interest, right? And it's not, well, you're taking IT side because you're part of IT, and it's a good place to.
I agree.
And I have an idea for a new company.
See?
Change
See
managers
what happens
are
here?
us.
Very creative.
Thank you. I try. I don't have many creative skills, but every once in a while. So that's my example of a place where any kind of change management would have made a big difference in that project, because we would have stepped back, taken a breath, and probably expanded the window another 12 to 18 months and been more successful.
Have you seen like a really good sponsor? Like, have you had an example of, because I think that sometimes, I don't think sponsors sometimes recognize the importance of their role. Like I had a situation where we rolled out Salesforce, and the executive sponsor was going to show up to training, and everybody was on the invite. She accepted it, the whole 9 yards, and she didn't come. And I don't know if she was probably like busy and all that other stuff, but I don't know if she recognizes sponsors. Sometimes I don't think recognize that small little action and the impact that it could have had on the team, because they were asking us questions that she could have answered, like asking us, like, why are we doing this? Are you guys just doing this for reporting? Are you just trying to monitor us?
So, no. I have not ever seen a fully engaged executive sponsor, and I don't think that's their fault. I think it's the nature of how executives get engaged with now. I think it's the nature of how much work many of them have and how many different directions they're being pulled in. The other half of that is too many times it's the wrong executive sponsor, and by that I mean too many times you have the CIO being the executive sponsor when it should really be the COO or the CFO, because it's really, I think one of the things that gets lost sometimes is IT is there to implement and support and manage. They are not there to run the business. But in a lot of cases the business is perfectly willing to put the information onto or put the responsibility onto IT. So and that's we're busy. Well, guys,
it's the IT stuff.
Too.
Go do
the
your
IT computer
stuff.
stuff, and then we'll tell you that it wasn't what we wanted.
Exactly.
Right? Or that's exactly what we asked for, but it doesn't do anything we wanted it to do. So I think executive sponsorship is, I think it's overused as a term and underexplained to executives. Now, I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of times when the executive's doing a perfectly fine job of managing it, but I think for the most part they need to have it explained to them that if you're going to be the sponsor, there's going to be places where you're going to have to do. And I'm sorry, you're going to have to commit a week to training or whatever it is, and just be there, because the troops need to see you there.
Exactly.
No,
I think that's a good point, and I think they need to rely on this maybe third party change managers are us. Is that the name of your company?
Change managers are us. Yeah.
Change managers are us.
Pretty sure
they need to rely on them.
Sue, but we'll get there when we get there.
They need to rely on them to coach them and tell them it's time for you to show up to training. You're going to show up for the first 15 minutes and you can leave. And I think that sometimes is they just need someone to tell them, because I had a boss a long time ago who I did that and be like, you need to go talk to these people. I just tell them, like, you need to go talk to this audience. And a lot of times he would say, can you write it up for me? Can you write up what I need to say? And that's fine. Like,
as long as they're willing to say it, because it is a figurehead kind of a role.
Exactly.
We don't need them to really understand what's going on. They need to be able to answer certain questions. They need to show that the company actually cares. And then you offload that responsibility and everything to whoever's actually managing the project. But you're right, they need to show up, and it always amazes me when you get in a company and you have perfectly competent people within the company, and then you bring in a consultant, and the C-level goes, oh, a consultant, well, they must know what they're talking about, because $350 an hour surely means that they know what they're talking about, whether they do or not.
I want to work for Change Managers R Us. $300 an hour.
I'm telling you. we're gonna take over Honolulu maybe with that. But no, but it's true. A lot of C-level folks.
Yep, absolutely.
The consultant comes in and says X, Y, and Z, and they go, oh, well, of course, then X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And when you have
Default
the poor
trust.
employee sitting there going, I've been saying X, Y, and Z for 6 months. You weren't listening to me. So I think that third-party change management process is probably has a lot of value in it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I totally agree. I just mentioned that because I think like sometimes it's that 15 minutes, and I don't know if that registers sometimes. And to your point, it's probably just somebody that needs to tell them, be there for 10 minutes, do this for 5, write this, and I'll write it for you. And you send, like just those little things make a massive difference with affecting change.
You're right, and they don't need to stay.
Yeah.
They don't need to sit, because that's not a valuable use of their time, honestly. Yeah. What is a valuable use of their time is to be that figurehead and show up, say hi, throw out the first pitch, tell everybody how great it's going. Are there any questions? And then come back at the end and do the same thing. How do you feel? How did we do? And yeah. Yep,
totally.
In fact, I'm going to see if I can pull that one off.
You can do it? Yeah, I mean, because it's like I said, when we would do, I wasn't on the change management teams, but when I would see them, it was like they do this huge surveys and checking how people like their learning, how was the past project, and then they'd aggregate all this information and come together with this robust communication plan, which I'm sure was very great and well thought out. But to your point, it's like I think there's some bits that you can pull out from that overall idea and implement it on a scale that gives you the results, right? It gives you effectively what you're looking for. Maybe not as fancy, but gives you some of those key things. By just talking to people, finding out what works and coming up with a training plan, like figuring out what should be in person, what should be video, what should be this way or that way, and kind of coming up with those plans.
Yeah, and training is the other thing that gets kind of left by the wayside all the time. But I'm also I'm on the fence about that, only because I'm never convinced that people are actually paying attention to the training, and they really only learn when they're under fire. I think for most people, that's actually how they probably learn. I've been to companies where they do a really good job of formalizing training and training, even to the point of training the people who are going to do the training and all of that kind of stuff, and evaluate and all that. But that takes a lot of overhead to manage. Right? When it's more or less pick an SME and hope that they have the ability to speak to other people, that's more of a crapshoot.
It's tough.
So,
super tough.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we want to end on a positive note. We have to tell a good story. We have to have some positive. Okay, you got one.
I do.
Okay, nice. I like this.
Not Salesforce, though. Might be a different platform. But we were asked to put a service catalog together, and we were given 6 months to do it, and none of us had any idea how to do it. And so we went and got ourselves all the training we could get, formal training we could get. We jammed probably a year's worth of training into a week. And then we took a core team, and that core team they dedicated themselves to that project for 6 months. And that also included a lot of change management, even though I don't think we were calling it that, and I don't even think we maybe even knew that that's what we were doing. But what we were doing was repeating the same thing over and over and over to our customers. This is how it's going to work. This is what you need to tell us. This is what you need to provide. And when we went live, there were almost no hiccups. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but in fact, I remember when we went live, I went on my computer to look at the website. And one of the fonts was rendering weird on my computer, so then I'm like panicky because it's day one, and then I went and looked at everybody else's computer, and it turned out it had something to do with the fact that I had admin privileges. So it was just this weird what, right? But
in the middle of that, did you think you were over communicating? Did you feel like I'm annoying people now?
Yes. But I mean, I've been in a lot of those, because mostly the vibe you get back is you're over communicating. You've told me this already, and I'm like, but 5 minutes after you walk out that door, you're gonna forget what I said. So that's my positive story. It turned out to be, we launched 150 catalog items on day one.
Nice.
As far as I know, it's still doing well. It took the requirement for managers to do all the requests and put it on the employees with just manager approval. So it was a huge value add.
Yeah. Cool. So.
No,
tell me.
No, that was it.
Okay.
That's my story.
All right, it's a good one. I like it. we're doing this thing where we have a use case, and it's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but it's sort of a breaking down a scenario to help think through maybe what are some of the key steps that someone should think about. So in this use case of the day for the podcast, trying to imagine a business that's transitioning to a new system. It's a customer service environment. So you're thinking about customer service things. What would be some key things that you would say, hey, think about this when you're looking at a transition like that?
Let me think about that. I don't have any personal right now experience with transitioning a customer service department. It's all the things we've been talking about, right? It's understanding what they do from day to day. There's some pre-work that everybody should probably be doing. What do you do? How do you handle this? What do you care about? What are you metricing, if anything? Mm-hmm. Then there's training. Yep. But again, I think formal training, a lot of times they're going to absorb maybe 20 or 30% of it. Yep. And then there's go live support. I think the most important thing, absolutely the most important thing in a project where you're implementing a new system for regular business users to use, not something that's going to be invisible in the background. Putting your users into Salesforce, your customer service users, right? Customer service agent in Salesforce. Having to look at the customer in a new way. Day one support, having people standing there going, oh, you're okay, click here, do this, don't worry. Most important thing you can do.
I completely agree with that. Because customer service agents, they take the brunt of it, right? They're the ones that take those calls, they're dealing with the emails, and getting them in the system early and alleviating that stress and then being there right behind their back, I think is a super great concept.
Nobody ever calls customer service or IT to say thank you.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. I mean, and that's the truth of it. So their job is relatively stressful anyway, and we're going to add to it because then they're going to have to tell the irate customer or whatever's on the other end, oh, I'm sorry, you have to hold on a second, I don't understand how my system works. But that day one support, having people who have expertise there to help, to reassure, and then, oh, by the way, management support. Yep. So that's so you have all the normal things in the project. You have requirements and you have training and you have UAT and all of those things, but really go live support, and I think a fair amount of communication to them, not necessarily about the status of the project and all that, but just to say this will be okay, and be honest. It's going to be hard. You're not going to like it at first. You have anxiety. I get it. You're doing tasks differently than before. Some of your tasks have gone away completely. Your job is not in jeopardy. Those are the kinds of things they need to hear because those are the kinds of things they think about.
I like your manager comment because there was a company that we worked with, and the managers actually went through the training as if they were customer service reps, so they knew what it was like for their guys that are dealing with it day in and day out. There's so much respect that you have for your team. There's so much support that they can offer when they did it themselves, right? They're doing it themselves. So I like that one. That's a good one.
I have an expectation that my managers know how to do the jobs of the people that work for them. Yep. Doesn't mean they're doing it. In fact, that would be a waste of their skill set, but they should know how to do it so that they can understand and have empathy around the difficulties and challenges and everything else associated to it.
Yep. Steve, thank you.
No, thanks
you. Thanks for chatting with me on the. Yeah, no, it's funny that we were just talking about it, and then literally, I would say the next few days later, this came up as another topic, and I thought, okay,
this is good.
We should chat about it. Come up with some good ideas. We're going to have some more ideas, I know. As soon as now that we've got
right down the street. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll end it.